Welcome to Write to Publish, your go-to podcast for all things writing and publishing. I'm Karen Stanley, a 14 times published author and the founder of Mabel and Stanley Publishing. Join me as I share a multitude of tips and insights drawn from my own writing and publishing journey. We'll be hearing from some inspirational authors too, who will share their writing experiences and top tips for success. Each week, we'll learn about an aspect of writing, from composition to genre and from publishing to marketing. Listen in as we learn and chat about all things writing and publishing, and let's get you on the right path. Hello and welcome to another episode of Write to Publish, the writing and publishing podcast for all your writing and publishing questions. I apologise if I'm a bit sniffly and snuffly in this episode. I'm recovering from the dreaded cold, but I'm here and raring to go. So this week we're going to talk about creativity boosters. Now, by its very nature, writing is of course quite a solitary process. And it's very easy to come up against bumps or challenges along the way, particularly if you're having to self-motivate, self-inspire, self-regulate, avoid procrastination and all of the above. It can be quite difficult sometimes to keep that going. And inevitably, you will come across times when you're not feeling at your creative best. You might be a bit tired. You might have a cold like I've got today. I woke up and I wasn't full of the joys this morning. I was a bit groggy. The dog might have done a tinkle on the carpet. All things happen that sometimes can zap your creativity and make you feel less than inspired. But there are ways in which you can boost that and keep yourself on track. One of the things I often say to my writers is, imagine if you were an athlete. This is quite a leap of faith for me because I'm definitely not an athlete. But if you were training for a race or a game or a match or something, there is absolutely no way that you would expect your body to go at 100 miles an hour, full throttle, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I mean, that would just be ludicrous, wouldn't it? No one would expect you to do that. It's not sustainable. It's not maintainable. It's not healthy. And most athletes, I'm sure, would tell you that actually the breaks in between your training are every bit as important as the training themselves, because your body needs time to adjust, to rest, to refocus, and all of those things. So why should your brain be any different? We expect our brains to operate at 100 million miles an hour all day, every day. So it's no wonder that sometimes when we're pursuing something that's very creative, our brains get quite tired. And if you think about it, it's not just the writing that's using our brain. The very act of sitting in a chair, your brain is telling you to stay seated on that chair and not to topple off the edge. You know, your brain is telling you to breathe in and out. Your brain is telling you to take a sip of water when your throat gets dry. Your brain is in action the whole time, all the way through the day, and it only really rests when you go to sleep, and even then not completely. Your brain doesn't completely ever switch off. So it's no wonder that when you're writing and you're using your brain quite extensively and you're asking it to do some quite difficult and challenging stuff, it's no surprise that sometimes it will go, whoa, hang on a minute, I'm a little bit tired, I need a little break. And when that happens, don't force it. Don't try and think, no, I've got to keep going, I've got to keep going, I've got to keep going, because you know what it's like with anything. If you force something, I'm reminded of there's a fable, I think by Aesop, which says the weather, the sun and the wind were trying to get the man to take his coat off. I remember reading this to the children when I was teaching, and the wind blew and blew and blew, and he was like, I'm stronger than you, I'm definitely going to get the man to take his to get his coat off. So he blew and blew and blew, and all that happened was that the man just clutched the coat tighter around himself and didn't remove the coat at all, of course, and the sun just gently shone. And gradually, the man got hotter and hotter and hotter until he took the coat off by himself. And it's almost like it was his decision. He wasn't forced into that decision. So that kind of reminds me when I'm thinking about creativity, you know, forcing your brain to do stuff is likely to make it almost go into panic or overwhelm mode. So if you do feel a little bit overwhelmed or like you've hit a creative bump in the road and you've come up against a little bit of a brick wall, don't keep forcing it. Take a bit of a break, and then you'll be surprised how quickly you can recharge and inspire and remotivate yourself and get your creativity going again. So I'm just going to share with you a few little tips to help you do that. One of the things I love to do, especially if I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed or lacking in creativity, but I do this anyway, to be fair, because writing involves a lot of sitting down on your derriere, which isn't super good for you physically or mentally. So one of the best ways to boost your creativity and get a little bit of a brain recharge and a brain break is to simply go for a walk. Now, I'm super fortunate. I live by the sea. And today, I don't know when you'll be listening to this podcast, but if you're listening to this on the week that I recorded it, today, which I think I'm recording it on a Monday, was a beautiful sunny day. The skies were blue, the waves were lapping on the beach. I mean, that was like a sensory overload. Took the dog down, she was straight into the water, having a little paddle. That's beautiful for your mind, your creativity, really gives you that mental health break. But if you live in the inner city, you can still go for a walk. And there's so many things that can stimulate your senses, the red buses or the taxis or people walking and chattering or the birds, kind of taking for shelter in the trees or coming down onto the pavements to pick at scraps that people have dropped. There's lots of things that can motivate and inspire you on a walk. So getting out into nature if possible, amazing. But if it's more of an urban walk that you are able to do, then even that in itself is good enough for you, just for the very fact that you're moving around. If you aren't able to go out, then just get out and do, unleash your inner child and leap around the house for no apparent reason other than to just get your body moving, or put some music on in the kitchen and have a little dance to yourself. Those sorts of things. Get that body moving. It gives your brain a bit of a break, and it inspires you because you're using other bits of your body, other bits of your brain, and other bits of your creative thinking. One of the things you do need to do to boost your creativity is to read, and read a little bit more. Not reading when you're a writer is kind of like trying to be a chef when you hate food. The two are so interlinked. And how can you tell what good writing looks like if you don't read? Okay, so if you're stuck with your creativity, if you're stuck with your plot or your storyline, if you come to a little bit of a standstill and you don't really know where your story needs to go next, read something in your genre. I mean, you should be reading widely anyway as good practice from all different genres and fields and subject matters and story types. However, when I'm writing, because I write a lot of chick lit, I would find it hugely distracting to read something that was a supernatural horror story, for example. One, because that's not my favourite genre, and two, I would kind of feel like it had taken me more off the path. Now, this is going to be an individual thing. Some people might favour a complete move away from the genre that you're writing, but I actually find it quite motivating and inspiring to read something that's of my genre. And if I look at it critically as a writer, I can look at what the author has used to engage me or to pique my interest or to develop the story or to describe the characters, whatever that might be. So reading is great if you've hit a little bump in the road, as is watching films, actually. I mean, obviously you can't look at composition so much, and that you won't see the narrative and the prose and the word choices as much. But sometimes if you're really sick of looking at a screen or sick of, reading, or you just don't want to look at words for a little while, a film can be a great way, because you can really chill out watching a film. You can pop your feet up, pour yourself a cup of tea. But if you watch the film as a writer, you can start to analyse, the plot, the storylines, the story arcs, the character development. And sometimes, particularly, again, I was writing one of my books, I can't even remember which one it was, and I'd reached a bit of a block and I didn't really quite know where to take the storyline. And I went back and watched an old favourite. I think it was Notting Hill, one of my all-time favourite films. Or it might have been Four Weddings and a Funeral, actually. A couple of those really lovely kind of rom-commy, kind of quite predictable. But because I knew the storyline very well, I was able to kind of sit back and really sort of analyse, okay, so how did the writer move from point A to point B, and what is it about that character that we really love as the viewer? So films can also, they do actually have their place with regards to boosting your creativity as a writer, certainly when you're looking at, familiar tropes and storylines. Diverse experiences are really great for creativity. And this applies to writing, but it also applies to life and business in general, doesn't it? I mean, having creativity, can be a huge benefit when you're a business owner, when you're faced with challenges in your life, being a creative thinker can really help you to get yourself out of a bit of a fix, because you look for different solutions, you look for different ways to do similar things. So creativity is a hugely transferable skill. But, diverse experiences are great for that. Do something every now and again that takes you out of your comfort zone. Now, I'm not suggesting you go skydiving or scuba diving, unless that's really something that you'd like to do. But try to, just new experiences. Go and watch a play that you might never have watched before, or go on a bike ride because you've never been on a bike ride, or go climbing or hill walking, or just do something that you've not done before, or visit another place and sample the culture, or try some different food. Do something that's a little bit out of your comfort zone that you maybe haven't done before, something that you've always wanted to try. There's nothing like a new experience to pique those synapses in the brain, to get your brain thinking, oh, actually, I haven't seen this before. This is new and exciting. This is getting me a little bit interested. So that can be great for boosting creativity. And anything really that is a sensory diversion. So sometimes when I need a break, I'll just go and make a cup of tea and might get myself a sneaky little biscuit. Not particularly because I'm hungry. I don't think anybody eats biscuits because they're hungry. If we did only eat them when we were hungry, we perhaps wouldn't eat them between meals as much. But that's an argument for another day. But something that evokes a different sensory experience. So, go and take a shower, or have a nice hot bubbly bath, or eat something that's crunchy or soft or sweet, or have a hot drink, something that is a sensory diversion from what you've been doing, which is largely probably sitting on your chair at your laptop staring at a screen, or if you favour pen and paper, staring at a piece of paper. So think about that sensory diversion. It's hugely important for a creative boost. And also, the other thing I'd like to say is embrace failure. Failure is part of writing. I'm sorry to be the bearer of that bad news. I think it was, didn't J.K. Rowling get like 60 rejections before she finally got published? Failure is a part of the journey. You have to learn to accept critiques and feedback that you might not always want to hear, or might not always be completely what you wanted to hear, but just see that as part of the learning process, and understand that the more you revise and review and learn and change and adapt and try out new things, the better your writing will become. So embrace that failure. I hate to call it failure, but embrace those challenges as part of your learning, and let go of perfection sometimes. Just let the ideas flow, let the words come, and don't get too hung up on every full stop, every capital letter as you write it, because sometimes that can really stunt your creativity. Mindfulness, another great way to boost your creativity. Taking a bit of time out, sort of quietening down the noise of life, a little bit of meditation, a little bit of quiet reflection, maybe listening to quite an emotive piece of music, or perhaps a little kind of hypnosis kind of soundtrack on there's loads of them on YouTube actually, or perhaps a little bit of mindfulness journaling, something that really allows your brain a little bit of thinking time, gives you a little bit of space, gets you away from the hustle and bustle, allows you to really focus in on the moment, and that again can be hugely inspirational for creativity. Something else really important, a writing tribe. I spoke to a very dear friend of mine who's a hugely successful writer. I think she's on about 500,000 sales, which in my book is pretty amazing. But she said, and we both agreed, you can hear her interview on one of the podcast episodes. It's an interview with Joe Bartlett. And she talks extensively about finding your writing tribe. It's so important because it's such a solitary pastime. Having a tribe of people who get you, who understand where you're coming from, who understand your overwhelm, your issues, your triumphs, your successes, your failures, and having people that you can chat to, brainstorming your latest character, or discussing a storyline that you've got ideas for, but you don't quite know where to take it. Having like-minded people to talk about your writing with, to bounce ideas off of, and to actually vocalize what's in your head can be hugely inspiring, really great for creativity. And if you get the right right people, it can really motivate you when you get stuck or when you're feeling a little bit fed up, and can really be supportive. So I cannot stress strongly enough how important a writing tribe is. And I do run a membership community, the Mabel and Stanley Writing and Publishing Community, which you'd be most welcome to join. It's hugely affordable. I think it starts at about $12 a month, which is barely a coffee these days, I don't think. But yeah, if that's something that would interest you, have a look in the comments, join the newsletter and I can send you the details, or just get in touch, Mabel and Stanley at outlook.com, and maybe put the subject line Writing Tribe, and I will send you the details. But a writing tribe, whether you choose mine or somebody else's, or whether you just find yourself a writing encounter buddy, it's hugely important for your creativity and for your motivation. Couple more things. Routine, really important. Get yourself a writing routine, and maybe a couple of little rituals that signal you're about to start writing. So it might be making yourself a cup of tea in your favourite mug. It might be putting your favourite cushion on your chair. It might be moving your desk to a really sunny spot near the window. Whatever it is, if you create those little rituals as part of your routine, what you're doing is subconsciously you're signalling to your brain, okay, we're ready to start, guys. The routine's in progress, the rituals are out, it's time to start writing. And that will kind of get your brain into that zone ready for writing. So any kind of routine or rituals are great when you want to really develop a habit. That's really what we're talking about. So we've talked about this a lot throughout this episode, but breaks and recharging, so important. Don't keep slogging away until the point at which you feel like you want to bang your head on a brick wall. Take regular breaks, whether it's just a little skip around the garden, or it's a walk to the end of the road and back, or whether it might be a little bit of yoga or a few star jumps, or it might even be a nap if you've had a particularly long and stressful writing sprint. But make sure you give yourself time to break and recharge. Don't feel guilty for doing that. It's all part of the process. And as I say, some of my best writing happens when I'm not writing at all. When I'm just strolling down the beach, I'll suddenly get an idea. And I still haven't learned to carry my notepad with me because I got a fantastic idea for some content the other day. Thought I'll definitely remember that, and I definitely didn't. So, record it on your notes on your phone, or have a little post-it in your pocket or something. But when you're not writing, it gives your brain time to just relax, and that's when in the background your subconscious will be going, oh yeah, hang on a minute, what do you think about this? So really important for creativity and for your mental health as well. And finally, set yourself goals. If you haven't got a writing timetable of any kind, if you haven't got goals of any kind, if you haven't got any benchmarks to work towards, then you are likely to have a book that will drift on and on and on and on and on a bit more. You really do need some deadlines. Even if those deadlines are a tiny bit fluid and they move a little bit, if you've got no deadlines in place, a book project is the master at getting you to procrastinate. So make sure you've got deadlines and targets in place, because if you haven't got them, how do you know when you've reached them? How will you know where you're going? It's like getting in the car and not putting the sat nav on, and if your direction's as bad as mine, you're never going to end up where you want to go. So set yourself some goals, get yourself a really good writing timetable so that you know when you're doing it, how long you've got to do it. And that way as well, you'll be able to celebrate your little wins along the way. So if you know that you were aiming to write 5,000 words by Friday and you get there and you can go, woohoo, that Kit Kat in the fridge has got my name on it. That was my treat for that. Or whatever it is. It might be a glass of Chardonnay, or it might be, I don't know, a coffee with a friend. Whatever it is, make sure you've got some really nice little things in there that will help you to celebrate those mini wins, which will keep you inspired, will keep you motivated, and it will keep you on track. If you have any questions, as always, Mabel and Stanley at outlook.com, or you can find me Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Mabel and Stanley Publishing. Always happy to answer your questions, to help you to get on the right path. It gives me an enormous sense of satisfaction, and I feel very humbled every time a writer allows me into their world and allows me to be a part of that journey. So I hope it's been helpful today. Keep writing, keep being creative, and cut yourself some slack. If you need a break, take one, because I promise you it will pay dividends in the end. Happy writing, take care everyone, and I'll see you all again soon.